state or county. This is a person's opinion. So why not try zero-based budget and performance audits? And that would go to you, Rob, please.
In many ways, baseline budget versus zero-based budgeting, in some ways that we already are doing zero-based budgeting. I think what my opponent was referring to is the fact that often when we look at sort of where the next year is coming from, is that where else do you look but you look to your history. But each year the departments start over again from the bottom up. And as part of that process we started a couple of years ago really identifying some of the performance measures that need to be in place so that we make sure that the services that we are supporting with our local budget dollars are actually being effective. So there is accountability that's built into our budget process. And so I think that's extremely important. So zero-based, we are doing that. It may not be what everyone considers to be zero-based, but we are starting from the ground up, and we're making sure that people deliver on what the services they're supposed to be providing.
I have to respectfully say, I know we're not doing zero-based budgeting in Kitsap County. Unfortunately, the county is still maintaining the belief in the structure that we have to, that somehow this money is entitled to the various departments of the county elected officials. And that's a problem. We need to have a zero-based budget. And to do that, we need to identify our core services. In Kitsap County, we do not identify our core services. Instead, each portion of the government gets their pie, their slice of the pie, and that's wrong. You know, we have to say that if we don't identify the core services, there's no way that we can save this money. So, you know, when Rob and I served together on the budget committee, we were both frustrated, I believe, with how the county officials would hide their budget, would not be open and honest and transparent in the budget process. And that culture still exists in Kitsap County. And until we address the culture, we can never have a balanced budget in Kitsap County. It's a culture of failure, and we have to fix that with the budget.
Thank you. Now we have some very specific budget questions that are coming from the audience members. And this one has a little statement up front. It says, recently the county put up $25,000 towards inducing Boeing to bring the 737 system to Kitsap County, a very noble cause. However, the county is so broke that workers in the Parks Department have to use their private tools to work with. What is your opinion on this situation? Chris?
Well, the bottom line is no employer should dictate or require workers in employment to use their own personal equipment to do the job. But as far as this money towards Boeing, that was absolutely the right decision. Any opportunity where we can have sensible growth in the economic future of Kitsap County, we must encourage or we must support. I can't speak to the use of personal equipment in the fulfillment of one's duties because I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think that the employer must provide this equipment to the employees. But I can tell you that any opportunity we have to grow, foster a strong economy for Kitsap, we have to take a strong look at it. So I applaud the commissioners for investing that money to see about having 737 come out. But I don't think that's necessarily an accurate statement either that the county would be having. I can't imagine the county would be having government employees use their own equipment.
Thank you.
I also agree that it was the right investment to make, and what we need to understand is this $25,000 is just one part of a much larger program to actually do a study as to where the various programs and services for Boeing will be going in the future and seeing how potentially Kitsap, and specifically the South Kitsap industrial area, can be an opportune place for that to happen, and what kind of synergies can we put into place and therefore create yet another economic cluster and driver for our local community. I'm not aware of anyone in parks using their own equipment. It's nothing that has actually been brought to my attention. I know that we do have budget for equipment replacements. It may not, because of the budget situation, be adequate to buy everything that we need or replace it, but we do have a process by which we identify that for the coming year and implement it during the year.
Thank you. So now, how about the question is the city, I'm assuming the city being Bremerton, has been borrowing money from various funds to balance the budget. How will these funds be repaid and where will the money come from? I got looks from both candidates. So, any candidates? The question is: the city has been borrowing money from various funds to balance the budget.
Yeah,
It says city. Oh, well, maybe. Oh, excuse me.
I think it
could be an abbreviation for county. It looks like city. Excuse my lack of ability to read the handwriting. So let's try county.
Okay.
Does that make more sense?
Okay.
So how about that? How about the county has been borrowing money from various funds? All right, now you got it. And to balance the budget. So how will these funds be repaid, and where will the money come from? Thank you for your help.
Well, I think there's two answers to that. One is, to repay that money, it's going to have to come from the general fund. There's no question that the general fund is where we're going to have to repay that debt, that borrowed money that we have to repay with interest. But to answer that, I think the second portion is really, until we address the fundamental failures of our budget process in Kitsap County, until we identify those core services, I keep going back to that because until we identify the core services, and we have a culture that says we can do this with our budget, we can have a balanced budget, we're not going to answer this question. Each and every year that we put off going to a zero-based budget policy, a program, we're going to continue to incur these debts. We have not had a balanced budget in Kitsap County since 2005. We have not had a balanced budget where we spent less money than we brought in since 2005. Each year we've had to borrow money from funds or borrow money from our reserve, and we have to stop that. So we have to address the core failures of the budget process in Kitsap County. And that's taking a long, hard look at how the county is structured and how it's operational and how it's organized. Thank you.
Without greater details about this, I know that there have been times in the past where there have been sort of inter-fund loans, but those have always been paid back to the general funds. Specifically, one example that I can give you about sort of this loaning interdepartmental is actually interjurisdictional. When the citizens of Kingston created the Kingston Metropolitan Park District, they needed actually some funds to get going. And so the county actually made a loan of $40,000 to the Metropolitan Park District. And there is actually a plan that will be repaid after they actually start collecting taxes. It's one of those things when the taxing authority started ahead of their ability to actually collect the taxes, but that has a mechanism by which it will be repaid in full. As to the comment about the county not having a balanced budget, we always balance our budget one way or the other. Sometimes in the past we've actually had to pull from reserves, but last year we put into reserves over $1 million.
Thank you. All right, staying with you, Rob. So this is a specific question, again, budget related. Why give $400,000 to Kitsap Humane Society and not use that money to keep county courthouse open on Fridays?
That's an excellent question. It's one of those things that actually, if you were to ask me where would we have an opportunity to potentially cut our budget or do some savings, that would be on the list. It has been a relationship that we've had with the Humane Society for a number of years, a contract for animal control services. And again, our challenge there is working with them to create what are the measurables. How do you define that there is value for what we're investing into your organization, what services you're providing? So I think that those dollars can be used in any number of other ways. And it's their challenge to step up as we go, especially into this next cycle of budgeting, to say what are they going to do with those funds, and they need to be able to substantiate their viability and their need for those dollars.
Going back to that question, I think that every department in the county government, and I understand the Humane Society is an independent agency, must balance and substantiate their budgets. And I don't think that by eliminating the Humane Society's budget, we're going to have significant cost savings. I think we're going to find significant cost savings and have a 5-day work week in Kitsap County because we address the core failures of the county budget. The core failures are we have too many employees in Kitsap County, and we have to look at reducing those employees. And I think that in the upper and middle level management, that's where you see that ballooning of employees. Thank you.
Well, Thank you, Chris. That leads actually right directly into the next question, which one of the audience members asked, will you cut county government employees by 20% when the courthouse is open 20% less than before the budget crunch?
Well, and I can't speak to a specific percentage because I think that's where the county's gone wrong. I think these broad cuts of 5, 10, and 15% the county's done in the past simply do not work. It's not addressing the problem. So will we reduce the staff? Potentially, but we need to go in there, and I need to have the opportunity to work with the departments to find and identify where we can have these cost savings. You know, one example of redundancy in Kitsap County is essentially every department and every elected official has their own budget analysis, or budget analyst to follow their portion of the budget. We have a lot of redundancies in Kitsap County. So I think that a 20% cut would be irresponsible to say at this time, but we have to have the county be operational 5 days a week. You know, we have to offer those services in Kitsap County. So it's identifying individually, department by department, going through that. You know, I think eliminating a county administrator position would be a phenomenal idea. I think that you have a more responsible board by not having that position. And, you know, for 10 years, we've had a county administrator, which is another layer of government between the department heads and between the county commissioners. So absolutely, I think we need to go through, but we need to go through carefully and make the right cuts.
Thank you.
You know, I hear a theme, and I actually agree that having the courthouse open 5 days, and I should say the administration building open 5 days a week, is actually a wonderful goal to have. Unfortunately, 20% cuts across the board, or that fairly draconian kind of approach, we have been cutting over and over and over again for the past several years. And just saying everybody needs to cut 20%, there are departments that cannot cut anymore. When you have our coroner's office that does not have enough staff, and they're actually having to go on call all the time, they no longer have services to actually maintain. They clean their own facility and they do their own weed picking and yard maintenance. When you have those types of situations, you have cut too far. So I think it's having an ongoing conversation about what is the most appropriate place to look at, and we are constantly doing that and trying to find efficiencies.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rob, so staying again on the budget, which is a popular theme among our audience this morning, the question is, the county diverted $500,000 from the Veterans Fund as excess to need. I'm not sure what that means, but the question is, why do we need a $9 million levy now? So the point is, the county diverted $500,000 from the Veterans Fund, and why do we need a $9 million levy now?
To start off with the diversion, it actually was not a diversion that the monies were pulled and placed somewhere else. What happens is that it's actually the way the state gives us the ability right now to support indigent veteran services. It actually is a subset of our general fund levy. And because there was a reserve that was high enough, actually over $1 million at that point in time, the decision was made not to collect or appropriate that amount for that budget year. When it comes to, is now the right time for a levy, the citizens and service providers in our community came to the Board of County Commissioners to ask for the opportunity to have this ballot measure before the citizens because the need is growing in our community. The 9.5 would be for probably the full term, 6 years of the levy. Actually, it would only be about $1.4 million on any given year, and it equates to about $12.50 on a $250,000 home.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think we're talking about some semantics here when you talk about not taking money from a fund and then not funding the fund. The bottom line is that the county commissioners chose not to put money that was already assigned into that fund. As far as this year's issue with Proposition 1, I think it's ridiculous that we're going to sit there and ask more money from our taxpayers at this time when we already are having people having difficulties making their mortgage, when we already have people having enough difficulties in the economy that they can't pay their own budgets. And for the county to ask for more money at this time is irresponsible. Plus, so what if the county receives this $1.4 million each year increase in the levy? Well, then the county can do what they have done always in the past, and that would be set that money aside in a special reserve fund and defund those programs from other funds in the general fund. So they're trying to expand their general fund by putting this, what seems to be a noble cause on the ballot. But at the end of the day, they're taking money still nonetheless.